Yo, what's going down, everybody? It is Straight Outta Boston here, aka the King of Boston, and today we're back with episode 3 or whatever of our MLB season preview podcast. Once again, here with Ryan. Say what up, Ryan.
What's up?
Yeah, alright, so today we're doing the AL West, and without further ado, let's get right into it. So, we're going to start out with the Texas Rangers. Finished second place, runner-up to the Oakland A's in the AL West last year. They had some big losses in the offseason. They lost probably their best hitter in Josh Hamilton. Their starting catcher last year, Mike Napoli, who was, I believe, a two-time All-Star now in the last 2 years. They traded Michael Young for I can't remember who, and they ended up missing out on potentially getting Zach Greinke or Justin Upton. However, they did sign Lance Berkman for a 1-year, $10 million contract. They really didn't do much. They kind of regressed this year. They did similar to what the Yankees did. They kind of cut back payroll. They're waiting for some of the younger guys to come up pretty soon. What do you think of this team?
Well, obviously this offseason was kind of poor for them because, obviously they came off the two World Series seasons, and in this season they were projected to either, World Series or bust, and they busted this year, and they didn't do anything to really help them out. In fact, they lost a lot of big talent in Josh Hamilton and Michael Young and Mike Napoli. But this team still has a lot of solid points to it, and it starts off with their hitting, which is still one of the top 10 in the league because they have Beltre, they have Nelson Cruz, who hopefully, whether or not he gets suspended, we don't know. They still do have Ian Kinsler, who is a freaking monster, and they have David Murphy, they have Elvis Andrews, Profar, and Mike Olt. So, I mean, that's a really solid lineup right there. But, I mean, I don't know if you can really do much better. In fact, I don't think you do as good as you have done if you lose your star outfielder in Josh Hamilton. So I really don't know. This team has a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, I really don't see them doing any better than they did last year, just considering they did lose one of the best hitters in the game in Josh Hamilton, as well as a guy who was very good for them in 2011, not so much 2012, but, still, it's hard to find good catchers these days, and certainly they'll probably miss Mike Napoli a little bit. And then, they lost, I think, probably their longest tenured player heading into, or at the end of last year, in Michael Young, who's kind of a clubhouse leader. So I'll be very interested to see how this team does this year, but I really don't see them doing any better. And, it was clear that they kind of ran out of gas towards the end of the year. They got caught by the A's. A's ended up passing on the last day of the season for the AL West crown, and then the Rangers ended up losing the wild card game. So it's clear that this team was missing something, that they had to get better, and I just don't see how they think that they can contend for a World Series when they're not significantly, but they're substantially worse than they were last year with the losses of
Yeah.
Hamilton and Napoli.
What do you think about Lance Berkman as a designated hitter?
I think he's worth a shot. I guess it's only a 1-year deal, so even though they're kind of paying him a lot, $10 million, it's not the biggest kind of concern in my opinion, just because it is for 1 year. And when the guy's healthy, even last year and the year before that, he's proved that he can be a contributor for someone in their lineup. So I kind of like the signing. Certainly he'll be a DH. He's not going to play the field. I doubt he'll ever really touch the field this year. But I kind of like that signing. I think he's a guy who can contribute a little bit. He'll probably make up for the Napoli loss, but he's certainly not going to be Josh Hamilton for this team.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think about AJ Przinsky, though? I don't think we mentioned him in the.
Oh yeah, I like the Brzezinski signing. I like the Brzezinski signing. He was an All-Star snub last year. I think he was better than Napoli last year though. He's cheaper than Napoli. I can't remember the exacts of his deal. I think it was 1 year, $7 million, something like that. So I like that signing. He's a good filler for a year or two, and then maybe they'll try to go after someone young, or try to get someone up through their farm system in the next few years. But I like the Brzezinski signing too, and yeah, I know. But he's a guy who had a good year last year, but the couple years before that really hadn't produced to what we thought of him, 5 to 7 years ago. So we'll see how he does. Maybe he'll benefit from playing in that ballpark. We'll have to see. But he's kind of more of a line drive hitter anyway, so I don't know. I think it's an interesting signing. I think it's a good replacement for Napoli, and him and Berkman. Those are two solid players, but once again, none of those guys combined are going to make up for the Hamilton loss.
Yeah, and like we both mentioned, I think pitching is probably one of the greatest questions about this team. When you look at the starting lineup, you have Matt Harrison and Yu Darvish and Derek Holland. And I guess Ogando's going to be in the starting rotation. And actually, those guys are all pretty solid. Yu Darvish had a really good season, or I don't know how good his season was last year, but it was pretty solid for coming from Japan. So I mean, these starters, they get the job done. They're not spectacular, and every single year they seem to be able to reload from a big loss. But this year they didn't lose anyone because 2 years ago they lost Cliff Lee. They did really well after that. Then last year they lost C.J. Wilson. Then they went out and got Yu Darvish. So, this team is they're able to rebound from any type of pitching hit that they can take, and they have tons of prospects. It looks like Martin Perez is going to be in the rotation this year, and he's a top prospect. So
yeah, this is a team with a solid 1 through 5 rotation in that they don't really have. I mean, I guess you would consider Darvish their ace, but he had a good year last year, not a great one. I'd say he's probably an ace on maybe 5 to 10 ball clubs in Major League Baseball at this point. But it just so happens that the Rangers might be one of them. But they have solid pitching all around, and even past their first 5 guys. You mentioned Perez. They're moving Robbie Ross to the rotation, I believe. They also have Colby Lewis coming back, I think, in July, as well as I don't know when
Neftali Feliz.
Yeah, Neftali Feliz. So it's a deep rotation. And there'll be room for struggling guys to get knocked out of the rotation, just because there's probably 8 guys on their roster that could start for them. So, I mean, I like the rotation. I think that maybe midway through the year they should address trying to acquire a staff ace type if they, they certainly probably have the budget to, considering they really did make a big offseason signing this year. So I think that if they found a guy like a David Price even, and gave up like Perez I don't know. It's going to take a lot to get David Price, but he's just an idea, just kind of a name I thought of off the top of my head. But they might look to do something like that, sometime at the trade deadline. But I like the rotation. I think that any day you see the Texas Rangers playing, you're going to get a solid pitcher you're going to have to face. So I think it's a solid rotation.
All right, so let's move on to our predictions now, and I'll go first to this one. So my prediction for the Texas Rangers this year is 86-76. Again, I think that's sort of like the record from last year. I can't remember what the record was.
They won 92 games. Let me check. 93 games. They won 93-69.
All right, so a couple steps back, I guess. So 85-77. Again, I think losing Josh Hamilton, Mike Napoli, and Michael Young, it's going to be a little bit too much of this team to handle. But I'm sure they could do something at the deadline to bolster their rotation or maybe get something to go with their lineup. So we'll see about that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I have them right there with you, 85-77. They'll certainly take a couple steps back, losing one of the best hitters in baseball, as well as potentially losing Nelson Cruz. And, we'll just see. Like I said, they'll take a few steps back. They'll still be a solid club, solid rotation, decent bullpen, good lineup, 1 through 6 or so, and then it kind of tails off at that point. But, it's a good team. It's not a great team. I don't think it's a World Series team, but it's a good team.
All right, so next we're going to be talking about the Oakland A's. So obviously this is your favorite team.
Yeah, one of my favorite teams. Them and the Red Sox.
This offseason, they traded Chris Carter, Max Stassi, and Brad Peacock for Jed Lowry. That's a questionable move. They signed Hiroyuki Nakajima, who will be their starting shortstop this year. They took part in the 3-team Michael Morse deal that netted them John Jaso, but for whatever reason, they decided to trade away A.J. Cole. Extended AL Manager of the Year Bob Melvin. They lost veteran, long-time player for them, Brandon McCarthy, who had a lot of injury questions, but he's a pretty solid guy. They also re-signed Bartolo Colon, and they traded away Cliff Pennington, and they received center fielder Chris Young in return. I think he's center fielder.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to play.
He's probably, but I'll talk about him.
Obviously, last year they were one of the biggest surprises in baseball. For whatever reason, they decided that they're just going to come out of nowhere and compete and actually win their division against the Texas Rangers and the Los Angeles Angels. So, for whatever reason, they were able to do that last year. But, again, you like the Oakland A's, so I'll let you talk about what you think they'll be able to do.
As Ryan mentioned, this is probably my first or second favorite team in baseball. I like a few of their moves that they did. Certainly extending the contract of Bob Melvin, probably their best move all year. One of the best managers in baseball. Really, really, I'm so happy they kept him. And I like the trading Cliff Pennington for Chris Young. It's clear that they kind of have a solid depth of shortstop prospects to go along with Hiroyuki Nakajima for the next few years. So they didn't need Pennington. Chris Young will probably take Johnny Gomes' role, platooning in left center and right, just giving them a fourth outfielder that they can give Reddick, Cespedes, or Coco Crisp an extra day off, or put one of them at DH. Probably Reddick, since he's got a good arm, but he can't cover too much range out there in right field. But anyway, I really though I disagree with the Chris Carter trade for sure. Lowry, I guess he's gonna play third base maybe. I'm not too sure on that. He's a guy who's never played more than 120 games or 100 games or something like that in his career. They traded away former top prospect Chris Carter, as well as catching prospect Max Stassi and pitching prospect Brad Peacock, who I was pretty high on actually. So yeah, I just really don't agree with that deal. But I've learned to trust Billy Beane and whatever he does. But also, I kind of disagree with trading A.J. Cole for John Jay. So A.J. Cole is a very raw, I believe he's 19 or 20 years old at this point. He's coming off I think he got moved up to Double-A at the end of last year and really, really struggled. And I think the A's sort of lost faith in him. And that's probably why they were so, they were fine with giving him up for John Jaso, who will probably only be here for a year, though, until Derek Norris kind of finds himself MLB ready. He really struggled with the bat towards the second half of last season, and Jaso certainly is going to take his spot. Jaso's a very good on-base percentage guy. Used to bat leadoff for the Rays just because Joe Madden, Joe Madden, couldn't remember his first name for a sec, was in love with the guy's on-base percentage. So anyway, that's a typical Billy Beane type of thing. I'm sure he really likes John Jaso, and I really, really wanted them to re-sign Brandon McCarthy. I think Brandon McCarthy is a really good young pitcher. He's not that young anymore.
He's not. I think he's 29 or 30.
Yeah, so he's not that young anymore. He's probably actually in his prime. But I really like Brandon McCarthy. He really figured himself out a couple years back. Had a good season last year until he got hurt towards the end of the year. And I don't know. His wife's really fun to follow on Twitter, so it sucks that he's not part of the A's anymore. So I like this team. I think that they kind of entered a win-now mentality, trading away Stassi and Peacock for Jed Lowry, and as well as trading A.J. Cole for John Jay. So, in previous years, it was always, let's trade Gio Gonzalez for 3 prospects and Trevor Cahill for 3 prospects and Andrew Bailey for Josh Reddick and, younger guys who are going to be with the team longer than them. And, now it seems that they've entered a win-now mentality, which is fine. I mean, I think it's a good ball club that – I don't know if they're World Series contenders yet, but I think it's a very good young ball club, and obviously they have tons of potential with 17 rookies on the final 25-man roster last year. So
I had no idea.
Yeah, I think it was something crazy like that. They have incredible potential, and it's going to be kind of a question of what they do this year. But what do you think about them?
The A's last year, didn't they have one of the top total pitching rosters in all of baseball? Weren't they number 1 or something?
I don't know, but all their pitching, that's really, really what carried them last year. They only had one guy. Actually, no, they didn't have a single 300 hitter in their lineup last year. Brandon Moss, who only played 40 games for them, was their only guy who had over 300. And Yoenis Cespedes was second at 290. Everyone else was below 270. It was their pitching last year that really carried them.
When you look at the A's, there's a lot of people you never heard of in the infield, but you look at the outfield and you have Yoenis Cespedes, Coco Crisp, Chris Young, and Josh Reddick. Those are all some very good, talented players, and that's a pretty deep outfield in my opinion. So, beyond that, you have John Jaso, and I guess we're gonna see with this Nakajima guy, but who I guess there's a bunch of questions on whether or not he's gonna be able to play in the MLB, and I don't blame him. But the bullpen, I think it was the bullpen who had a really good season last year.
Yeah, that combo of Doolittle, Cook, and Balfour was unstoppable. 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, so if their bullpen can do really well again this year, we could definitely be seeing the A's repeating this year, but. I don't like this team for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's just because I'm salty at them because my first franchise last year they did last year, and I did the A's last year, and I didn't do shit with them because I sucked with them. I don't know if I'm just mad at them or what, but I just don't like them for some reason. So I don't know. I think second base and third base is definitely a question, and some of the moves with Billy Beane. Trading away all those young guys for Jed Lowry who might not even start. I mean, unless he starts at third base, I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, like you said, trust Billy Bean.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I certainly agree that they shouldn't have. I think they gave up way too much for Jed Lowry, who's at best probably a platoon player for most teams in baseball.
but yeah, their starter rotation, it does look, I guess it does look like pretty good, though. I mean, you have Brett Anderson. You have Cologne, who, whether or not he'll still be good without steroids, we'll find out. You got a really young and potential stud in Jared Parker. Then you got Malone and Griffin. So I mean, we're gonna see. I mean, these guys are all really, really young. It seems like, and maybe another year of experience is gonna help them out a little bit. And we'll see. But I don't know if they're gonna be able to contend in this division or not.
Yeah, I hope. I'm just gonna mention this kind of before we get into our predictions because this is one of my favorite prospects in baseball, even though he's very under the radar. I hope they call up Dan Straley this year. That guy, he's the exact opposite of what you would think a top prospect would be in pitching wise. You'd probably think a top prospect would throw 95 with a mean curveball or something. Straley probably throws 87 at his peak, but he has such good movement on the ball. He's so much fun to watch. He's the typical guy who wasn't built to play baseball, but he learned because he's just he studies the game. And I mean he came up a bit last year, pitched a little bit when Cologne first got suspended, and then a couple other guys went down. But we'll see if Dallas Braden comes back this year. Brett Anderson, who was hurt for a lot of last year, he looked good towards the end of last year when he came back from injury, so that'll help them. Him and Parker will be a really good top 1-2 at the top of that rotation to go along with Tommy Malone, AJ Griffin, and probably Cologne, and then we'll see where they go from there because who knows. But yeah, I mean I think it's a solid rotation. Anyway, do you want to go to our predictions or?
Where is Dallas Braden now?
Dallas Braden, I think he's missed all of the last 2 years due to shoulder surgery, or maybe.
Yeah, I think the only reason people like him is because of his perfect game.
Yeah, I know he missed all of last year, and I think he missed most of 2011.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, who knows what he's gonna do.
All right, so let's go to our predictions, and you can go first with this one.
All right, so I'm kind of at a stretch here. I'm a big fan of this team. So in terms of I'm just a fan of the A's. So I'm kind of reaching here a little bit, but I'm going to say they're going to win 92 games this year. That's probably higher than a lot of people have them. I'm an A's fan, so I'm going to be biased, but I think they're going to win 90 plus games this year. I like this team. I think that they've entered a win now mentality, and hopefully they can just carry over some of that magic from last year.
My prediction for the A's this year is going to be 79 and 83. I don't really have much faith in Oakland for whatever reason, but I mean, again, I didn't have faith in them last year, but they ended up winning the division, so they could definitely. I mean, I'm sure they can, totally prove me wrong and do something, but as of right now, I don't think Oakland is going to be a good team again this year.
Yeah, and one last thing, Dallas Braden's actually a free agent. Because I think he signed a 1-year deal to avoid arbitration last year, and then last year was the last deal of his contract, and the A's just didn't extend it. So,
all right.
If anyone needs a pitcher,
all right.
Dallas Braden.
All right. Yeah, maybe the Indians can pick him up. All right, so let's move on to the Angels.
Oh yeah, do you want to? I'll talk about them. So the Angels had probably maybe the biggest offseason in Major League Baseball this year, mainly acquiring one of the biggest offseason signees in Josh Hamilton, and then losing Zach Greinke, who was okay for them at the end of last year, but he really wasn't the staff ace that they were kind of hoping he would be, or not really a staff ace, but a guy who could kind of go second behind Jared Weaver. And they also signed Ryan Madsen, which is good. They acquired Tommy Hanson for Jordan Walden, which I think was a very smart move for them. That was one of the moves that I think really benefited both teams. I think the Angels had a stocked bullpen, and with guys like Frary and Scott Downs, and then after signing Ryan Madsen, they didn't really need Jordan Walden, and they got a solid young pitcher in Tommy Hanson, who's he had a decent year last year, but we know this guy's got a lot of potential, and hopefully he can kind of find himself in LA, going along with a very solid rotation. They did lose Dan Herron, who I think that's going to be a significant loss. But hopefully Tommy Hanson can kind of make up for that. They also trade away Irvin Santana, who I think is terrible. But and also another really good move. Once again, a move that's going to benefit both teams. Trading Kendrys Morales for Justin Vargas. So this once again is going to shore up the rotation behind Jared Weaver. And Kendrys Morales is a guy they didn't need, especially after getting Hamilton. Morales came up as a first baseman before breaking his ankle in that walk-off grand slam celebration. I loved Morales. I thought he was going to be the next 40 home run hitter for the Angels, and I was really a big fan of him when he came up. He really slowed down ever since that ankle injury or shin. It might have been he broke his shin. I can't really quite remember, but getting Vargas, Vargas is very solid. He is, he's the definition of solid in my opinion. I mean, he's a guy who's going to go out, gets you consistently the last couple of years like a 3.5 ERA. He can give you 6 or 7 innings, probably get you 10 to 15 wins. Really, really good move by the Angels, I think. And the Mariners didn't really need Vargas with all their pitching talent coming up, but we'll talk about that later, obviously. So I really like the Vargas trade, and this is a really, really good ball club. I mean, this is a monstrous lineup. You can go ahead and talk about them if you want.
Well, first off, I just want to say that for whatever reason, the notes had Justin Vargas, but it's Jason Vargas.
Oh, did I say Justin Vargas when I?
Yeah, it's
oh, my
Justin
bad. It's Jason Vargas.
Yeah. All right. So this lineup. Oh man. So I mean, if you look at the lineup, you have a great leadoff guy in Mike Trout. You also have Peter Borges in the outfield, who I don't know where he's gonna hit. He'll probably hit ninths with all that speed, so he can kind of recycle to the top of the lineup. Then you have your 3, 4, 5 guys, and Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols, and I think Mark Trumbo hits 5th, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
I guess so. And beyond that, you have some pretty solid hitters. You have Eric Ibar, who's a pretty speedy guy, and he gets on base. You have Alberto Callaspa, who always seems to have like a nice average, as long with Howie Kendrick. Then you got Chris Iannetta and all those guys. So this lineup is looking really good. So I mean, last year when the Angels signed Albert Pujols, everyone was quick to say that the Angels were going to be at the top of the AL West, and obviously they didn't do that. And I mean, I'm never really a fan of these huge signings where these teams put together these superstar ball clubs. But I think after a year of having Mike Trout and Albert Pujols together and being able to kind of gel together and all this other stuff with the rest of the lineup, adding Josh Hamilton is just going to help this lineup even more. And I think that they're already solid enough to where they can absorb a new player and they'll be able to they'll all be able to play together. So. I mean, I think that 3-4 combination of Josh Hamilton and Albert Pujols has got to be either like the best or second best of Miguel Cabrera and Prince Fielder. So it doesn't get any better than this. I mean, this team is just stacked. There's so much power in this lineup. Mike Trout, Mark Trumbo, and Albert Pujols and Josh Hamilton all together is going to get you so many home runs. That's unfair.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that, like you said last year, they struggled kind of after making the big signing with Albert Pujols and having Trout get called up and kind of it being Trumbo's second really full season in the bigs. But, they kind of got hot towards the end. They won 6 of their last 10 games, which, although that might not sound like much, but if you win 6 out of every 10 games of baseball, you get 97 to 98 wins a season. So, if they do that, then they're going to, breeze through their schedule this year, and it's just it's a really good all-around ball club. There's certainly places where you can improve, bottom half of the order maybe back end of the rotation, but 2 years ago you would have said with Pujols and Hamilton's free agency coming up, those might have been the 2 best hitters in baseball 2 years ago, and the fact that they're on the same team right now, that's incredible to go along with probably the guy who a lot of people thought should have won MVP last year in Mike Trout, as well as maybe the most impressive guy at the home run derby last year who has just absolute pure power in Mark Trumbo. That's got to be. I mean, I would be afraid to be pitching the AL West right now because having to face them probably 2 to 3 times a year, that's going to be rough. I mean, that's a stacked lineup. Their bullpen's very, very solid with Ryan Madsen and then Ernesto Frieri and Scott Downs, and then rotation. If you think 1, 2, 3 is probably going to be Weaver, Tommy Hanson, and Jason Vargas. That's a pretty solid 1 through 3.
C.J. Wilson.
And how can I forget C.J. Wilson, who although struggled last year, I think he'll start to rebound a little bit. He's a good pitcher. We all know that. We've seen it in the past. So if you have a 1 through 4, I mean that's your playoff rotation right there. If Jason Vargas is your 4th pitcher in the playoffs, I have a lot of confidence in that team. I don't see anyone in the AL West stopping these guys.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, like you might talk about the Angels and you think this awesome lineup, but you got to remember they have really good pitching. I mean, like you said, one through four is going to be absolutely awesome. Then you have the bullpen of Madden, who's coming off the injury. You have Ernesto Frieri, who had one of the lowest ERAs in the league last year. You have Scott Downs and Sean Burnett. I mean, that bullpen looks fantastic as well. So I mean, that can definitely be one of the top rotations in the league for next year. And I mean, losing Dan Herron and Irvin Santana, it might be a step in the right direction because, those guys are kind of inconsistent. Irvin Santana, who can seem to never win, even though he had this awesome lineup around him, he still never got much run support apparently, and, he could never win. And then Dan Herron, who had a lot of injuries in the last few years. I mean, I guess they're just kind of moving away from them. So, I mean, this rotation still looks very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people. Sometimes people like to comment in our podcast that we don't talk about defense. If you want to talk about defense with this team too, Trout and Borges and Pujols, three of the best at their respective positions. I mean, this team, they just don't really have any holes. I mean, like I said, you could maybe talk about a fifth starter. You could possibly talk about maybe a catcher or something like that, something along the lines of that. But really, I mean, their weaknesses are more than made up for by their strengths.
Definitely. So, you want to do the predictions now?
Yep. I'll go first. I have this team winning 100 games this year. Like I said, I mean, I don't know who's going to stop them in the AL West. They get to play the Astros 19 times a year. I would not be surprised if they completely swept the Astros this year, going 19-0. I mean, this team. It looks on paper, and I know on paper you can't take too seriously, but it's a season preview podcast. You're kind of looking at on paper teams at this point. So, and on paper, this team is just loaded.
My prediction of this team, I just changed it because I kind of realized that they do play the Astros this year. This year, I changed it to 103-59. I mean, it's ridiculous. This lineup is ridiculous. So.
Yep.
103-59.
Yeah. All right. So should we move on?
Yes. Next, we're going to be talking about the Mariners, who had a really interesting offseason this year. Even though they did miss out on Justin Upton, which I think is a good thing, honestly.
Well, considering what they got, I think that it was a good idea.
Yeah, they did get a very good Michael Morse. They received Kendrys Morales in exchange for Justin. Why do I have Justin Vargas?
Yeah, what is with you on these notes?
I don't know, but they got Jason Vargas, or they traded him for Jason Vargas. Missed out on Josh Hamilton, who, I mean, that would have been interesting if the Mariners would have got Josh Hamilton, but they signed Jason Bay to a $500,000 contract, which is pretty much, really doesn't matter. It's like, all right, Jason Bay used to be good, but now he sucks. So
he had a home run though.
Now
he had a home run his first spring training game.
That's awesome. And I don't think Jason Bay is even gonna start in this outfield now.
He's
but
a player.
They also signed Raul Ibanez, who he's gonna be starting for them in left field, and they extended Kings Felix to a monstrous new contract, which I don't know if I quite agree with, but I also do agree with signing the quite arguably the best pitcher in the game to a massive, what is it, like $175 million contract.
7 years, 175 or something like that.
It's ridiculous. It's not a scope and shop move.
But not a thrift shop GM move.
But yeah, definitely the Mariners had an excellent offseason. But I mean, I think this lineup on paper looks really, really nice. But I think that's not the thing you want to talk about. With this team, you definitely want to talk about this rotation. So if you look at the rotation, I'm looking at their depth chart right now, and after King Felix, you have Hisashi Iwakuma, Erasmo Ramirez, and Joe Saunders, and Blake Beavan. So I'm not sure if if any of this pitching on this team is going to be good enough to actually win them games. I mean, definitely this lineup is going to be really nice, especially with Jesus Montero and Justin Smoke. They had pretty bad years last year, but they're still very young. They're still developing, and they're still learning how this league works and whatnot. So I hope Justin Smoke can really have a good year, because I like Justin Smoke for whatever reason. And if you remember, he was one of the biggest parts in the Cliff Lee deal.
Yeah.
So
do you want me to talk about them?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I like this Mariners team. I think that pitching is certainly going to be a problem with them. I think what they're kind of stuck in between right now. Their lineup is certainly, it's a great lineup. It's probably playoff ready. Their pitching though, they're kind of waiting a little bit. They don't want to go out and sign pitchers because they know they got three of the best young pitching prospects in baseball coming up in the next 2 years, 1 to 2 years, quite frankly, with Taijuan Walker, Danny Holtzen, and James Paxton, I believe. I always get him and Jameson Taillon confused, but
There's James.
yeah. So they got three of the best young arms coming up soon. Walker's a fireballer. He's probably the best of the bunch. Him or Holtzen. That's kind of that's up to personal opinion, but really. And then this team, it's a young team. Guys like Montero and Smoke and Ackley were former top prospects that they probably will progress a little bit this year, hopefully get a little bit better. They got Mike Morse for almost nothing. I mean, John Jaso, he's a good player, not young, but good player that we talked about previously. But considering that he would have just been stuck behind Jesus Montero, who's likely going to become a full-time catcher this year instead of DHing like he did last year a little bit. Either way, Jason just didn't really have a spot on this team anymore. Morris is definitely a better hitter than John Jay. So he's also very versatile. He can play. I think he came up as a utility player. He can play almost anywhere. So they can really move him around depending on what some of their other guys do. They also brought back Raul Ibanez and signed Jason Bay. Two guys who will probably be bench players for them. Maybe I don't know about Ibanez. He might DH. We'll see. I think Kendrys Morales, though, will probably DH for them. He's a guy that I still have hope for. He certainly, his development was stunted by that terrible, terrible injury. This freak accident really sucked. Because I really liked Morales when he came up originally. But, we'll see what he can do in Seattle. Maybe he'll kind of revamp his career a little bit. I like this team. It's a very good team, very good lineup. Pitching's going to kill them, though, this year. They're not going. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. They don't have the pitching. They don't have the bullpen. It's what's going to kill them. 2-3 years down the line, I think we'll talk about this team potentially winning the AL West and being a playoff team. But right now, I just don't see it. Just not with that pitching.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I hope they don't do is this year, if for whatever reason at the deadline that they feel like they can still make the playoffs, I hope to God that they do not trade any of those three monster prospects that they have, especially Taijuan Walker, who's one of the nicest dudes that I've ever really watched. I mean, this guy, he's such a caring person because I see him on Twitter and Instagram, and he's such a family guy because his mom has cancer and he's constantly talking about her and whatever. So I mean, I really hope that they don't trade any of these guys away because there's really no reason to. In 2 to 3 years, if all these guys develop correctly. And if all these guys can be, monsters, you could be looking at a rotation involving King Felix, Taijuan Walker, James Paxton, and Danny Holtzen. I mean, that in a couple of years, that'll be a really good rotation.
Yeah.
So hopefully they don't make any moves. I mean, I'm going to say it right now. I can see them at the deadline trying to get David Price.
Yeah, I think that'd be foolish. I mean, and they almost did it trying to get Justin Upton. Justin Upton's, he's obviously a bigger trade asset than Michael Morris. He's younger. Morris is 30. Justin Upton's only 24 or something like that. He's still crazy young.
Yeah.
But it would have been foolish if they gave up Nick Franklin, one of those pitching prospects, for Justin Upton. Because even with Justin Upton, this team isn't a playoff team without pitching. Because, I've said it in previous podcasts. I'll say it constantly. Pitching is what... you can look at the A's last year. They did not have a very good lineup, but their pitching carried them. Look at the Red Sox last year. Great lineup. Pitching was terrible. Didn't make the playoffs. Dumped half the team, in August. So, I've always said pitching is what's going to carry you. And this year, even if they got David Price, paired him with Felix Hernandez, that'd be great. But Price is going to end up leaving at the end of this year, and it'd be foolish if they did that. So, anyway, I agree. Don't, just stick to your 2014 plan. Don't try to win this year, Now,
however, I am going to say this. Now that I think about it, if they could potentially get in a deal at the deadline with David Price where they only give up one of those guys, I would take that, actually.
Yeah, I think if they could do Nick Franklin and not Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, I think anyone who's not named Taijuan Walker for David Price would be a great deal, as long as you only give up one of them. I think if you give up Holtzen and Paxton for David Price, who he's not guaranteed to even stay after this season.
I think that'd be a stretch.
Yeah, I mean again, a couple years ago they traded for Cliff Lee, and they traded him before half the season.
Yeah,
so
it's just.
All right, so let's move on to our predictions, and I'll go first. I have Seattle going 78 and 84. I think that they're going to continue to improve this year. Last year they won 75 games, so I mean they get 3 more games this year. But definitely they have a much better offense, which is the thing that they were looking for this whole offseason. They wanted offense. They wanted to stop sucking at offense, and I think they've definitely accomplished that goal. But however, I mean, like you said, pitching is the key, and they don't have that right now.
Yep, I'm basically right there with you. I have 2 games better. I originally had them at 82 wins, but the more I think about it, the more I just really dislike this rotation. Hitting sells tickets, pitching wins games, and they just don't have any pitching this year. So, maybe they'll make a move at the deadline. I really hope they don't. I think they should just stick to the young guys. Don't get impatient, and it's just really, hope that those guys pan out, and this could be a very dangerous ball club 3 to 4 years down the line. So, anyway, I think that's pretty much it for the Seattle Mariners. So should we move on to the next team?
I don't know. Should we?
Should we even mention them? The Houston Astros, the Disastros, as some have dubbed them, the Lastros. Should I talk about them and all their glorious offseason moves?
They got some good moves this offseason.
Yeah, man, they really signed some top-notch players. Carlos Pena, great. No, Pena's a great guy. I love Pena. I have a good Carlos Pena story.
I love people who hit 220
and 199. Don't get it twisted.
Oh.
They also signed Philip Humber, Mr. Perfect Game, Mr. 5.4 ERA, and Eric Bedard, the clubhouse killer. He was listed as the 3rd biggest asshole in baseball in SI before last season, right up there with Przinsky and Kevin Youkilis. They also got new jerseys. That's probably their best offseason move. And this team, they didn't do anything, and they're gonna be terrible. I mean, you can talk about them.
I don't want to.
I mean,
I definitely think that this team has a potential to win 50 games. I mean, in this division, it's so terrible for these guys. I mean, they get to face how many times they get to face the Angels this year?
19.
Okay, how many times do they get to face the
18.
Rangers?
18 for all of them.
How many times do they get to face the Mariners?
18.
How many times do they get to face the Oakland A's?
18.
So that's 72 losses right there.
Yeah, that's at least 69 of their 72 losses coming this year. I think they'll steal 2 games from Seattle, 1 game from Oakland.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a stretch.
That's I have faith. I have faith in Bud Norris,
the
staff ace, who they're looking to trade because his salary's too high, of $3 million. This team actually has a lower payroll, I think, than the 2006 Marlins, who had
No. There's a funny thing that I think I showed you this a few weeks ago. It was a Yahoo story about the Astros, and their payroll this year is lower than I think like 12 players in the MLB. I think Alex Rodriguez makes more money than the Houston Astros will pay their players this year. Along with I think Prince Fielder makes more, Miguel Cabrera does, Josh Hamilton does, probably King Felix does now. So
yeah, I wonder, is their payroll lower than the 2006 Marlins? They had a $14 million payroll that year, which was I think
Jeremy this year
might have been
24,
their highest.
26. I don't know. It was like 24, 26 this year.
All right, so that's solidly doubling the Laureus.
I think they're just playing Moneyball and hard.
I mean, I don't know. They didn't have much to begin with. They certainly didn't end with much. I mean, they got Max Stassi and Brad Peacock out of the Ched Lowry deal. So I think those are 2 nice young players. I'm high on Jonathan Singleton. He's high as well. He's been suspended for marijuana possession. And Jared Kozar, top pitching prospect. Only the Astros' top hitting prospect would get arrested for marijuana possession.
I wouldn't blame him if he's in the Astros farm system.
Oh man, this team, they're not going anywhere this year. I don't know. Anyone picks this team to win more than 60 games is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing with the Astros is you got to think about the future, and if you're an Astros fan, Mike, I mean, you just got to look forward to the future. I mean, you only got like a 6-year wait until they might contend for the 500 spot again.
Yeah, maybe Carlos Correa will hit 300 or something.
But yeah, I mean, you have to think though. I mean, the next 2 or 3 years, they're probably going to be getting the #1 pick in the draft.
That's
So.
good. I wonder if over the next 3 years they'll combine for 162 wins. It's up in the air.
But yeah, I mean, I think the only person or only team that can stop them is the Marlins this year from the #1 spot. So whatever, no matter what, for the next 3 or 4 years, they're gonna get the #1 or #2 pick. So I mean, it's all about the future for the Astros.
Yeah, there
now.
isn't much to say. They have some solid prospects. I mean, Cozart, Singleton, Correa, all very raw players at this point. And then Carter, former top prospect, maybe they can kind of salvage him. He reminds me a lot of Jose Bautista when he came over to Toronto. I'm not saying he'll work out as well as Bautista did, but it's just a similar situation. A guy who has a lot of power but can't really put bat on ball quite yet. Stassi and Peacock, good young prospects. There's some hope for 5 years from now, but this is, I mean, they don't have a major league roster, and playing in that division, probably one of the better divisions of baseball. I mean, going from playing the Cubs 18 times a year as the worst team in their other division to playing maybe the 80-win Mariners as the worst team in the AL West aside from them, that's rough, man. I mean, they're gonna have a brutal schedule.
Yeah, so I mean, should we really go to our predictions?
I think we should. I think this is the best part of the show.
All right, so you can go first, yours.
All right. I got them winning 49 games. I do not think this team will win 50 games. Let's see. Last year they ended up, I believe, with 55 wins. Yep, 55 and 107. They're not going to get any better. They dumped one of their better players in Jed Lowry, and they're playing in a tougher division. I don't think this team's going to win 50 games. They might not even win 40 games. I mean, I'd feel bad. For anyone who has Astros season tickets, why?
Well, I mean, if they're $10,
$10 for box, oh my god.
My prediction for Houston is they're gonna go 46 and 116.
They have a cool stadium. I like their stadium, even though it's ugly and it's terrible and it has a fucking hill in center field. I like their stadium.
And they got a train. They have a train.
Yeah, they have a train track that Albert Pujols destroyed.
Now what is the longest losing streak in the MLB on record?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm gonna Google that. You talk for a little bit. I'm gonna Google that.
What's up, guys? No, because I think that the Astros could easily. I mean, I have them winning 46 games this year. I don't know. It's hard to say that this team can go on a 2-game winning streak, though.
I think I'm thinking that if they get a stretch where they play they have home and homes against the Rangers and Angels, that's 12 losses. Then maybe they travel to Toronto. They do an East Coast swing at Toronto, at New York. They could definitely hit a long losing streak.
Oh man, what is it? Did you find it yet?
Nah, I'm still looking it up. I'm on Yahoo Answers. It's very, very.
I think the Astros should sign Kyle Loesch.
Yeah. Well, isn't their pick protected?
It
better be.
So. Oh my god, this
is
longest losing streak in the MLB.
This is not an easy thing to find. Oh wait, no, I searched longest streak. Whoops.
There you go. 20 by the Athletics and 43. I don't think that's the top though. 21 by the Orioles.
They had a big losing streak last year, didn't they?
Well, the Orioles began the 1988 season at 0-21.
Ooh. I wonder what the first 21 games for the Astros look like. I think they could eclipse that.
Phillies lost 23 in a row.
Yeah, 1961.
So I guess it's 23.
Yeah.
I mean, this article I'm looking at only lists a bunch of long losing. Oh no, this is by each club. Okay.
I think it's the Phillies though. The one I'm reading says.
So yeah, I think it's 23.
All right, I think they'll lose 23 in a row.
I think they'll lose 30.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, if they play Rangers, Angels, and then they go to Toronto Yankees, and they come back home for Angels and. I mean,
Maybe
it's
they have
gonna
like
be
an
brutal.
interleague series against the Nationals thrown in there.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if you're an Astros fans, but I mean I don't know if they can even win 50 games
Yeah,
this season.
they have
So
5 years from now. They might have hope, but right now, worst club in baseball easily. Yeah.
easily. Well, all right. So that was the AL West, and
Yep.
it was pretty interesting. I mean, this is one of the best divisions in baseball by
Yep. Four
far.
potential 80-win teams and one potential 30-win team.
I think the best division in baseball might be either AL West or AL
Yeah,
East.
you
Or
know,
AL
1 through 5 certainly. It's in terms of depth, these have got to be probably the AL West and the AL East, probably the two best divisions of baseball.
So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this division.
Yep. So comment below, tell us what you think. Give us an over under on the Houston Astros wins. I'll set an over under of 45 wins. Tell me over or under. I'd be curious to see what people think. But anyway, that's pretty much gonna wrap up this video. So let us know what you guys think of what we said in the video, in the podcast. Let us know if you agree, disagree, all that good stuff. Next week we'll be covering the NL East, getting to the NL at that point.
That's gonna be a great
That'll be a good
one.
one. That'll be a fun one. But anyway, that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. Any last words?
Just thanks for watching, guys, and make sure you guys check out our channels and whatnot, and comment below on anything that we said in here. I mean, I'm sure you guys already commented about us saying Justin Vargas.
Yeah, I'm sure there's 4 or 5 comments already that have been removed because they didn't wait 30 seconds. But that's fine. Anyway, this is gonna wrap this video. So I thank you guys for watching. Hope you did enjoy, and as always, I'm out. Peace.
See you guys.